Asia Minor, at the very center of Constantine the Great's new empire, was the natural site for a new imperial capital. A new Rome, set halfway between East and West, between the Danube and the Euphrates, where Europe meets Asia, and where modern Istanbul now stands. It would be the first Christian capital of the Roman Empire. With his usual modesty, Constantine called it Constantinople. Like Constantine himself, the city was filled with superstitions, ancient signs and symbols, memories of much older gods. This beautiful stone actually stands in the center of what used to be Constantine's imperial racing stadium. It's for chariot races. You see, they started off over there, galloped down the street, round the end of the stadium, and then roared down the street down here for the finish. It was always at the center of the city life of Constantinople. It was a great favorite. The imperial palace was just over there, and there was a special little covered way by which the emperor could come into his box to watch the chariot races. Everybody thought it was a fabulous city with the water all around it and everything, but it was also a pretty gimcrack affair. Constantine had had it built too quickly, and the buildings were badly made, and some of them were pretty ill-designed too. But what he did to compensate was quite a clever thing. He actually plundered the Western Empire of its treasures. All the great statues and lots of beautiful things and famous historical things from the West were brought here to Constantine's new Rome. Just look at the things that are gathered up, even in his stadium. This obelisk is ancient Egyptian, made thousands of years before Constantine's time, came from Thebes. Over there is a very famous object, a funny old column made of 3 snakes, which celebrated a victory of the Greeks over the Persians, 500 BC. The great horses of St. Mark's in Venice, they were taken from this square. I suppose Constantine had this thing about relics. He loved old things. He loved things that were filled with history and religion, holy objects, relics. But the greatest of all of Constantine's relics wasn't any object, but an entire country. The Bible told that Jesus had lived in Palestine. Constantine now turned his attentions to this poor province of his empire. In a few years, the literary landscapes of the Bible were marked out upon the earth. Constantine made Palestine into a holy land, the birthplace of his new imperial religion. The Nicene Creed had said that Jesus was born of the Holy Spirit and the Virgin Mary. Constantine now built a church of the Nativity at Bethlehem, an ancient sacred spot selected by Constantine's bishops, controlled by his imperial church, and sacred still today. On every spot where Jesus' life on earth had touched with heaven, his place of birth, of death, of resurrection and ascension into heaven, Constantine built a church. And these today are Christendom's most sacred shrines. Constantine built the biggest of his churches at Jerusalem, at the place of Jesus' crucifixion and entombment. Most of it's gone now. Its ruins are filled with monasteries and an Arab bazaar.
صباح النور. ممكن نشوف المكتب بتاعك انت؟ شكرا. طيب شكرا.
This isn't just an ordinary baker's storeroom. Look at the walls. Look at those huge stones. Only Herod the Great or the Emperor Constantine ever made walls in Jerusalem with such big blocks of stone. In fact, that's the end wall of Constantine's church. Even in his day, there were little shops along here. You could walk down through the street, through the market, look into the church, into its great glittering nave. Isn't that extraordinary? The doorway of Constantine's church has ended up as the basement in a Coptic monastery. Bits of it are still here, though. Look, there's part of the great door frame. Would have sailed on up into the air much higher than that, had great cedar doors that creaked open. Bit of the bolt still there, even. There's an extraordinary letter which was written from this very spot where I'm standing, right from the middle of the doorway, looking out from the little marketplace, looking in towards the great church beyond. It's written by Constantine's secretary, and he thought it was the marvel of the age. He describes rows and rows of columns going back hundreds of yards. And above it all was the coffered roof that Constantine had wanted. And the coffered roof, his secretary said, had so much gold on it that it seemed to flash and fill the church with its light, coming right down through the lights and running across the pavement. Today, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre stands on the site of Constantine's great church. It's changed a lot, but underneath you can still see the arrangements that Constantine made for the holy sites. Up there is Calvary. Can't see the rock anymore. It's all covered up in balustrades and beautiful mosaics. Constantine's day, it had a great golden cross on it, bejeweled, symbol of the new faith, the resurrected Lord. I'm standing approximately on the side of the road which once ran round the walls of Jerusalem. And over there is the site of Christ's tomb. "1,700 years on, and the pilgrims still visit the place which Constantine's bishops had decided was the tomb of Christ." You may well wonder whether that strange old monument really is on the site of the real tomb of Jesus Christ. Well, there's some remarkable indications that it is, quite close by. This sooty little chapel is still sooty from a fire 100 years ago, and nobody's decided what colour to paint it again yet. But this sooty little chapel is immediately behind the tomb. The tomb stands in the main building over there. This wall here is the original back wall of Constantine's great church. And through here is something hundreds of years older. These are ancient tombs. And ancient tombs with this little round top looked a bit like ancient ovens. And in Hebrew, they're called hohim, oven. And these tombs are constructed according to the traditional ritual measurements of Jewish tombs. That is 6 handbreadths wide, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 high. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, traditionally, this is part of the family tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. That's the man who gave his own tomb up to Jesus. What they are for certain is part of a Jewish cemetery from around the time of Jesus. So, that proves conclusively that Constantine's site in which he built Christ's tomb was really in the middle of an ancient Jewish graveyard. Not only that, the fact there's an ancient Jewish graveyard here shows that something that's now in the middle of Jerusalem was in those days outside the walls. And that shows that Calvary is in a probable site for the real event itself too. But Constantine's bishops had a bit of a problem because, all right, they've got this traditional site and they've got a Jewish graveyard in it. But how do they know that the tomb they picked was real and not these little ones over here? How did they know which tomb to pick? Well, the records say that the workmen were clearing the rubble away and the priests were watching them, and suddenly they saw the tomb of the risen Lord, and it was risen like the Lord himself. They found the tomb in the dirt. It was an identification by tradition and by faith. Now, you might get done under the Trade Inscriptions Act, but in those days, faith and tradition were the Trade Inscriptions Act. They were as important and real to them as that level of truth in trade is to us today. Anyway, it was real enough for Constantine to build his huge church right over the top of the site. Christ's tomb became the center of Jerusalem, and Jerusalem for 1,000 years the center of the Christian world, the place where the point of God's compasses had touched the earth and scribed out the circles of the universe. And Constantine? It's said that he was baptized finally on his deathbed. His ministers had been so scared of him that no one would touch his corpse for months. The man had still ruled as he had rotted on his throne. Now notice that Constantine built the heart of his empire in the Greek world of the Eastern Mediterranean, far away from Rome and Latin Italy. So the Church of Rome was no longer the church, the emperor's church, at the center of the empire. This made life very difficult for the bishop, the Pope of Rome, for this was still not a truly Christian city. Constantine could turn Palestine